Diamond, Diamond.
A precious gem of the most valuable kind. When pure, it is clear.
Diamond, Diamond.
A family name bringing traditions of love, hard work, and moral values.
This is the Diamond Education Podcast with my mom and dad, Jon and Kellee, England.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Diamond Education Podcast. We are excited to be here. We are your hosts, Jon and Kellee, England, and today we have Allison Sorenson on with us.
We're excited to have Allison today. Allison is married and has 5 beautiful children, 4 boys and 1 girl. She's the board of directors of Education Opportunity for Every Child here in Utah. She grew up discussing education choice at the dinner table, and the passion never left her. She has worked for multiple nonprofits across the state doing fundraising and development. She also worked at a private school helping dropout students, as well as the vice president at a first-year charter school. Allison is known for her ability to grow things from the bottom up. Welcome to the show, Allison. We're excited to have you.
Oh, thank you all for having me. I was very excited to get the invitation.
Allison, if you could tell us about Ed Opportunity and how you got into education choice.
Yeah, so Education Opportunity for Every Child kind of came out of, so many things. It was a little bit of a crossroads in my life, honestly, where I was like, all my kids are going to be in school and I should get back into education policy. As you guys mentioned, I had kind of grown up talking about education policy and just fell in love with it. And so had reached out to some of my contacts, and that opportunity was born basically because there was just an opportunity to really push for education choice and being able to give people more education options and freedom for their kids. And we really needed to build out the grassroots part of that. And I absolutely love just connecting with individuals, parents, families, and being able to talk to them about their education options and what's going to work best for their kids. So that was kind of how it grew. And we've been operating for a little over a year now. Obviously started at like 0 last year and now have growth of over 10,000 people who are committed to, supporting more education options and choices for families and want to do that. So it's been fun. I've traveled all over the state and met with people from St. George to Cache County. So it's been super, super fun. And just to see the varying individuals, families, and kids and all the varieties of education that people do across the state. So,
yeah, that's amazing. Actually, so about a year ago is when we first met you and started working with you. So it's been quite a journey for us as well. It's been kind of amazing. So what are some specific things you've worked on over the past year that you're wanting to talk about?
Oh, goodness. So many things. What have I been working on? Like, where do I even start? I think the biggest thing was just being able to connect with people. That was kind of number one, is just being able to connect with people and start a conversation about education choice. So there was a huge conversation we had in the early 2000s, from about 2002 to 2007, about education choice in the state. And we were able to pass at that time what's called the Carson Smith Scholarship Program, which is still in operation today and serves students with special needs. And then we tried to pass a universal voucher program, actually. And that went down in a really public referendum. And when things go down in a very public way like that, the appetite from lawmakers is like 0, and from the public. It's just not something you can touch. And so we hadn't touched anything like that. We used to call it, the dirty V word, like you can't say voucher because it's just a bad word. And so part of it was just connecting with people to open up that conversation. It's been, I'm going to be really bad with my math. 2007 to now. How many years is that?
Oh, that's
over
14
years. 15 years. Yeah. And so we started to be like, we could have that conversation again to say, hey, what about this? And with the national thing. And so that's probably the piece that I enjoy most, because I just love connecting with individuals and people. So done a lot of that, obviously, to grow our list, to over 10,000. We did a lot of just meeting with people and talking with them. And then the other big things that we worked on are, we worked on some charter school legislation, because that's obviously also an option. It's an option that a ton of families use. We have over 60,000 kids in charter schools in Utah.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a huge base, and charter schools have become quite regulated in a lot of different ways that we really wanted to free up. So we worked on some specific special ed issues in charter schools and for district schools. The cool part about working with charter schools is we also get to bless district schools on the same thing, because we get to. And so there was a bunch of district special needs kids, as well as affected in charter, that weren't being able to have inclusion in the classroom, and they were shipping their kids off to units. And we were able to help pass some legislation that would allow those kids to be in the classroom and have full inclusion. And if you are familiar with special needs or have a soft spot for special needs, you probably know having full inclusion in the classroom is incredibly powerful for their education and for their social emotional learning and all of those things. And so just to be able to create those bonds and interactions within a classroom with traditional peers. So we worked on legislation that way, which was a huge success. And
let me ask
also
you
worked
a
with the
quick
state board on that.
follow up with that. So you mentioned, the Carson Smith and a bunch of other things that way. What are some why do you think that so many parents are maybe looking for different options out there?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Just because every kid's unique. I mean, I've got 5 kids. I know you guys have 5 kids. If you have any more than one child, I don't think it takes 5 kids to know how different your kids are. So if you just have more than one kid, which I think most people in Utah do, but I could be totally wrong at that, you recognize how different each kid is and how unique their needs are. And the government education system is really great at being a system and serving mass populations. But the reality is kids are super unique. And specialized is kind of another word that comes to mind. They're just specialized in very specific things. And so when we try to take a system that's supposed to serve large populations of kids that really came about in the industrial age is when public education really became, we have to do this because kids were in the factories. And what they really wanted was to get these, they were like, gosh, but all the industrial revolution, right? We have all these young kids in factories, and there was a labor movement to say these kids shouldn't be in these factories in these terrible conditions. And so we created, there was already some public ed and schooling going on, but we really created government ed and compulsory education at that point to keep kids out of factories. But if you think about the mental space where people were and how they created that, they were used to the factory system. And so we created our schools much like the factory system, just because that's the time and age it was. And it was great, we're just going to put these kids through. And all we knew was going to the factories and the industrial age and all those things. And now, we go forward 50 plus years and we're in a completely different space. Mm-hmm. And children's unique identities and needs and what they need is so different that the government factory system doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, having 5 kids, we've learned fast. You can't put all of them in the same box. So and each year is different. So our oldest especially, it's every few years we're changing things up or finding a new,
just trying to find that right fit for what she needs. Yeah, for sure.
So Allison, you said you had been out traveling the state, meeting with parents, teachers, and lawmakers. What are some of the takeaways that you are hearing from the people of Utah?
Oh, that's such a great one. They want options. They want options. They want more choices. They want more flexibility in their education. And that really is the reality. I mean, we've done surveys and different things, and over 70% of people, not even school-age kids, but just individuals, are open to education choice and want more options for their kids and want more flexibility. And that really people, when we talk one-on-one, there can be like some confusion about the things because social media makes it confusing, the news makes it confusing. But when we talk about the facts and really what it does, everyone's on board. Everyone wants a better education for their kids. Everyone wants a better education because it also creates a better workforce, which means all of the things like growth and economy, which obviously everyone's super concerned about right now in that. And so that's, whether you're in rural Utah or you're along the Wasatch Front, they still want education options.
Exactly, yeah. I was actually on a group the other day in a rural area, and the girl was like, I wish we had more schools like the private or co-ops or micro schools that had sports and teams. Like, some areas are a little stuck at the moment with options.
Yep.
So,
for sure.
Yep.
So you mentioned the Carson Smith earlier. What are some ways that we currently have, like education choice funding? What are some education choice funding options that are out there that people are using across the state?
That's perfect. Yeah. So we have, Carson Smith is technically called a voucher program. It's operated by the State Office of Education, and you apply for that through your district, and the private school will help you. There's lots of help if you want to do that. And it's money for private school. And there are there's probably 30 plus private schools that take that across the state. And they're super willing to work with you and help you with your child. The other program we have is also for kids with special needs. I do want to know, it's interesting that we have these two programs operating right now for kids with special needs because Utah, just because this is like, current event kind of thing, because Utah has been such a pro-life state and abortions here are much lower than probably in other states. We have a lot of kids with special needs. And so it's kind of an interesting dynamic that we have here because of that. But that's just the reality. And so we do have these two programs. The other program is called the Opportunity Scholarship Program. And it's an education savings account program. And what that means is that you can use the money for private school, but you can also use it to buy curriculums or do therapies or do like home education type things. So you have a lot more flexibility with education savings accounts. With the history of school choice, education saving accounts have kind of become the gold standard because they allow so much flexibility and autonomy to the people who choose to participate in them.
So what would you say are some of obviously an ESA, if it were, or an education savings account, if it were so amazing, everybody would just be for it, right? There would be no arguments against it ever, right?
Right. That's why I do this. That's why I have a job, Jon, because no, you don't actually have to do anything to get this done.
I've been in the space too, and so some of the arguments I've heard are hey, we need to make sure that they're being accountable to academically and things like that. So what would you say to somebody that's arguing, hey, we need academic accountability in these programs?
Accountability is such an interesting question because I think we talk about think about accountability with your kids. How are your kids accountable to you? Right? We probably all have like, hey, you need to do this and then you get X, right? We have that kind of accountability systems at a micro level. Right. When we look at schools, government schools, because it's just the system that our brains kind of are programmed in, right? There's systems. Government school is a system, and systems people really, really want accountability because that's how systems work. Yeah. And so in schools like that, we have testing. We do these end of year tests, and that is kind of how we quote unquote hold them accountable. What's interesting, if you dig into that, is most of the kids are failing. We have less than, around 40% proficiency across the state, across the board in English, math, and science. It's 40% or less, which I'm pretty sure is an F if we think through that. Yeah. And yet we take the test at the end of the year. We don't even get results back until October. So we've already started the next school year. And so I kind of look at it and balk and laugh a little bit because I'm like, is that accountability? Like, okay, I can do that kind of accountability. Like, that's not accountability at all, right? Yeah. Like, my kid still moves on, right? If my kid doesn't do their chore, he doesn't get the thing. But if they don't pass the test, they keep going. It does not matter. Like, the teacher's salary doesn't change. The school doesn't it's like, cool. we took the test, check box, right?
Right.
So it's kind of it's a phantom accountability, really.
Yeah.
But when we look at education choice programs, and charter schools are a little bit of that, but broad education choice, when it's like literally open to the market, accountability comes because programs don't continue. Schools don't continue. Education programs don't continue. It's very much like, the restaurants. I think COVID, just because that was all so recently, right? We saw restaurants close down. We saw businesses close down, and we can talk about all the reasons why and whatever. But the reality is they closed down.
Yeah.
And there was like a restaurant that had opened near me just before COVID, and it was so good. It was this Greek restaurant. I was like, oh my gosh, we have good food. Yay, finally.
Mm-hmm.
And so my husband and I went every week. Like, they were doing takeout, they were doing like all the things, and they survived. They survived and opened a second location because they were good. They offered good service, they had good food, and they had good quality. And if they didn't, then they closed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was
Especially during that
actually,
time.
They when I was up at the legislative session this last year, the legislators had some concerns because there were some charter schools that were failing, that they were trying to keep open because people didn't want to go to them. And so I agree with you. That's the accountability I agree that we just need in education.
Exactly. Right. And we actually need to be okay with schools failing. We need to be okay if schools shut down.
Yeah.
It is actually a good thing if a school fails and shuts down. We have a bunch of schools, government schools in East Salt Lake area that are closing down.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, they're sending their kids either to a private school, they're homeschooling, or they're open enrolling into a different school. There's also a shrinking child population there. So there's multiple compounding factors that are creating that. But the schools are having to close because they don't have enough kids.
Yeah.
But what if the schools didn't close because not only did they not have enough kids, but they were just failing to educate the kids, right? It's like, there's a combination of things here we need to look at and just say, it is okay if schools close. And if we look at that in the marketplace, that is how it works.
Yeah. Well, and I think in general, if there's failure, we learn from it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's one of those things that just because they're government schools, it's a social program.
Yeah.
And social programs don't close.
Yeah.
That's just the reality. It's like, it's the beauty of the free market. And we've literally removed the free market from education at this point. So we just the whole goal of education choice is to steroid shot in free market principles to be able to create a richer economy.
Yeah, exactly. So another argument, Allison, is that public tax money shouldn't go to private schools, homeschoolers, et cetera. How would you respond to that argument?
You're the one paying the taxes. You're the one putting the money into all of this. And I get one of the other beautiful parts about a free market system and education choice is that you get to choose in. You get to choose in. You do not have to participate in these programs. No one's requiring you to participate in these programs. Like, hey, if you want to do this, let's do it. And I think that's also the beauty of options. I love that people will choose not to use this program.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that you want to do that you have the ability to do that you have like the gumption, the finances, and everything else to stay out of it.
Yeah.
Most private schools in the state totally want to take the money.
Yeah.
They're ready because the competition for a private school or any sort of private education place, they're competing against free.
Yeah.
Competing against free is really hard. Yeah. It's really hard to compete against free. Even when you have a better product. When you have a superior product, it is still hard to compete against free. And so private schools, they are so excited for programs like this and are huge advocates and allies in this. There's a couple that aren't, and that's great. Good for them. Like, they have their model and it works for them, which is beautiful, right? It's all that we get this really eclectic mix of things because we have a really eclectic mix of kids and parents and people.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of it too. The parents, but the schools get to choose too. They're not forced to take the money.
Exactly.
Either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
awesome. It's freedom for everyone. It's so awesome.
Yeah. Well, and just as, we're recent homeschoolers and a few of our kids go to private schools, and we use different, like one of our children this year is going to use the Children First Education Fund, and we use My Tech High and things like that. And it's truly blessed their lives, to be able, because each of them, like I said, some private schools working, some homeschool. Our older daughter, has done a little bit of public and different things like that. And it's like, why shouldn't we be able to access money? We're paying taxes. So these kids, why wouldn't, if they are doing better like our kids are, right? Why wouldn't you want your taxpayer money, and sometimes less taxpayer money, going to these options,
Right.
So.
Well, we're coming kind of to the end here. And so a couple questions for you here at the end. Why is education so important? Sorry, why is education choice so important to you?
Oh, why is education choice so important to me? Because it gives people a way out of poverty. I think so often, and I forget this a lot too, and my parents were super good about taking us, because we grew up incredibly blessed and incredibly blessed financially. And we often would do, Christmas stuff or go do humanitarian projects or, whatever. We made sandwiches for the homeless every Sunday for months, maybe even years. And we would go to these populations that are just, low income areas, and they don't have a way out. They don't have the ability to have someone stay at home and homeschool them. They don't have the ability to send their child to a private school. And they know that their only way out of poverty is through education. And so that's really why I feel so strongly about it, is because I've met with these people, I've gone to their schools, I've seen where they're at. Yeah. Those are the kids I am fighting most for education choice. Everyone needs it. Everyone deserves it. Every kid's unique. But those kids financially don't have another option. Yeah. And that's why I do this every day. And I have pictures of them in my room that I look at, and I'm like, this is why I do this. Because there's a lot of haters. When you put your neck out to do something, everyone shows up and you're like, oh, hi. And so I do have to remind myself every day, like, this is why I get up and do this work, because I want those kids to have options and opportunity and hope in their life.
Yeah. I love that, Allison, because we have a lot of naysayers, I would say, in this field in Utah. Yeah. And I loved the opportunity this last year when we did work with you to meet, because it's easy for you to say in your circumstance where we're blessed, right? Like, right. Yep. Oh, I can totally, like, this single mom and work all day long and pay for my kid to go to a private school, right? Yep. But what about the story I heard about the kids who don't have parents, where the social workers are watching over them, and the social workers know there's a better opportunity for them elsewhere, or the kids that these big classrooms is traumatic for them, where they would benefit from a school with a smaller classroom, Yep. So it's just
so many things.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So
many things. It just gives such a beautiful face for it and understanding, because then we see some of these kids. It's actually amazing to me, as I've met with a bunch of private schools too. A lot of these private schools are religious. Yeah. We have a large Catholic school, private school community around here. There's Lutheran schools, other Christian and non-Christian. We're just religious schools in general. Yeah. But a lot of these schools, amazing to me, have taken kids for free. Yeah. And they educate them for free, or for the bare minimum that these parents can afford, because they also see this and they know they need these kids out, and they take these kids from these struggling places and these, failed homes and other things, and they give them this incredible education. And to break the poverty cycle that's something totally worth fighting for.
Exactly.
And so, but then I also see these private schools and they take these kids on and they're willing to do it and they do it and they see it as part of their ministry, I think. But they also recognize they can't stay open either forever, operating like that. It's this balance that they have. And so that's, I think, part of the reason they're so excited and support these types of programs so much, because they recognize they can't continue to do that for kids forever, even though they want to.
Yeah.
So,
Allison, I have a question. What is education?
Man, that's a great question. Education is being able to progress. It's being able to learn and understand and get curious about the world around you, and fall in love with it. Yeah. Through that.
Curiosity. I like that.
Love that, Allison. So, and then
this is our last question. This is our out of left field question that we're going to be ending all of our episodes with. That we apparently it was a good thing that we let you know about. So.
Yeah, it was.
Who is one of your heroes from history and why?
Yeah, it is a really, really good thing you let me know about this question before. Because this is kind of a side note, but history, I moved around. I was in a different school every year until high school growing up. And that was just because of my dad's job. And I was in different states and stuff. And so I actually never got history until high school. And it was just because every year we'd move and it's a different school, and then it was always geography. And so when I finally got history, I just fell in love with history. But I started thinking through okay, who is the person that stands out? And I just thought Winston Churchill was one of the first people that came to mind. I just think that man was incredible. And then I thought, but then there's Mother Teresa, and there's Gandhi, and then there's Joan of Arc, and then I start going through, I'm all these people. And then I go through, we're Christian, and we studied Esther last week, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's all these amazing Bible heroes. And I just and then I start thinking about my own family and my family history, and I'm like, oh, there's this grandma and this great, all these, I just had this flood of people come. And I started thinking okay, why are all these names coming up? What is the thing that, why? Just trying to think, okay, why are these people moving away? Because I couldn't really put my finger on one story that I this thing. And it kind of came down to this quote from Steve Jobs. And it's about the crazy ones. And he says, here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. But the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do. And that came down to all the people I could think about in my family history, in scriptures, in history in general, is they were bold enough to stand up and say, this is what I believe and this is what I'm willing to fight for. And they did it despite all of the fear, sometimes death, naysayers, and everything else. They stood up and said, no, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to do it. Yeah. And most of the time they did. And even if they failed, they failed forward, right? We have that full fail forward. They kept going. Thomas Edison's how many fails did he have, right? We only remember for light bulb, but how many fails did he have? And so I think that he was bold enough and completely insane enough to think he could do electricity. And he did.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so I just think about all of the people, in their quiet ways or in their big ways, that are crazy enough to think that they can change something. And maybe it's for the whole world, or maybe it's just in their little world. And education, to me, for a parent, a low-income parent, any parent to think, I am crazy enough to take my kid out of the system, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it really is. Because that's what we all grew up doing. It's what we've all done for so many years.
Yeah.
And it's just what we do.
Yeah.
And so if you're crazy enough to step out and do something different that way, that's like, I just have to give it to them. And that's all of my heroes from history come down to that. They were a little bit crazy in their own way.
We're all a little crazy. Right?
Yeah, and they do, but they make the difference.
Yeah.
They change. They truly change things, and that's for me. It's like, no, I just want to change things, and so I look to them and say, no, we can change it. We can change things around here.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Allison, thank you so much for joining us on our inaugural podcast and working through our technical difficulties and all of those things. Where can people find you if they want to follow the work that you're doing with Education Opportunity for Every Child?
Yes, awesome. So at opportunityutah.org, and at Opportunity is our handle on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I think too.
It's a lot to keep up on.
But yeah, you can find me there. And would love to connect with you. I do a Facebook Live. We're starting to do Facebook Lives again, like every Wednesday night. So you can get on and just listen to me talk to myself about whatever seems to be on my mind at any given moment. So.
Yeah, which Allison, you're awesome. I always can, if I have a question, the policy, the legend, you're it in and out, and you're very good at explaining things. So
thank you. Well, thank you. And definitely stay tuned because we've got big things coming. We're not giving up on anything. So we've got big things coming for January. I'm very excited about, as we can't say anything because we're trying to get all the pieces together, make sure we can really do it. But it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Awesome.
So thank you guys so much.
Thank you,
All right,
Allison.
And good luck. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you for listening to the Diamond Education Podcast.
You can connect with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook
At Diamond Education, DIMOND, or on our website, diamonded.com.